The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Director Peterson has, from the outset, sought to apply neighboring village municipal codes to the city of Prospect Heights. The very first meeting in January began with his presentation of existing codes on the books of other villages which seemingly explicitly omit many of the villages around Chicago, like the city of Chicago proper, that have no ordinances or restrictions on keeping chickens. The stated problems during the January Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals was a small number of yearly noise complaints and zoning ordinance violations of chicken coops, which were already addressed by the existing municipal zoning and law enforcement codes. Application of the proposed restrictions by Director Peterson do not directly address the stated issues and instead seek to impose restrictions on the residents of the city simply to, quote, be like our neighboring villages, explains Prospect Heights resident and chicken keeper Randy Brace. Quote, I am especially disappointed by Commissioner Peterson's dismissive statements to the press over existing structures of chicken-owning households who were told by the city that their coops did not require permit/inspection. Many community members attested to similar experiences, including a member of the PZBA that has previously owned chickens. The director appears to be on a fishing expedition to expand his role in the village and has been unchecked to this point. The same department that complains of being understaffed and small is now growing their own role and responsibilities in a show of bad governance. Randy Brace goes on to explain, depriving residents of their ability to provide additional food security, education, and improved animal welfare in their food supply, while still not addressing the stated problems or seeking data that supports further action is bad for all communities, and especially the city of Prospect Heights. Resident military veteran and chicken keeper Michael Kormaniak asks, quote, what problems do we have that wouldn't be resolved by just enforcing our current laws? And if the city says they don't have the resources to enforce them, why are we adding more? These are the questions that we've repeatedly asked, and they've never answered. What a huge waste of our time and tax dollars. This is a question the community members would like addressed prior to an ordinance change. Influenced by her desire to raise her own family in a great community with a backyard, mother of four, homeschooler, and nature school educator Nikki Moylan of Prospect Heights has chosen to create a home and a space where she can raise her family with a backyard chicken coop while also finding a community of others like her for support. She said we specifically moved to Prospect Heights in 2020 because we can raise chickens here. We're looking for a suburban homestead, and that's exactly what we found. It's disappointing, to say the least, that current city employees are ignoring the needs and desires of residents, ignoring the few who have real issues and are trying to create new regulations that will do more harm than good. Another resident, Genevieve Charette, said, we want our residents to live in peace, and that's why we've proposed fact-based solutions that offer time and resources to the city to make that happen. But they continue to shut us out and discuss sweeping changes grounded in myths and misinformation. All this for 3 zoning complaints per year. My message is to our elected officials is this. We've let this unnecessary debacle go on long enough. Chicken keeping is a sustainable and peaceful way of life, one that works and benefits the entire community. That's why cities everywhere are dropping restrictions. I don't want to live in a town that moves backwards. Resident Grace Martins has lived in the 3rd Ward of Prospect Heights since 2004. She's a mom of 2 and active in giving back to the community for about 12 years. She said, I've rescued chickens from slaughter, including a rooster. We've worked with the zoning board to make changes that would make reporting noise complaints easier to make and enforce, yet the Daily Herald article implies the city is moving to all-out ban roosters. They provide an important role in our flocks. These birds are social, and if removed, will cause a dynamic shift that will decrease our egg supply. The hens will mourn their roo. So I did learn that roosters, if there's a predator, they actually go after the predator to protect the coop. So fellow chicken keepers in Prospect Heights are invited to speak to your local alderman and city mayor by calling the city at 847-398-6070. I'll repeat that, 847-398-6070. And please attend the Planning and Zoning Board Meeting of Appeals meeting on June 26th at 7 p.m. at City Hall. I'll have links to the proposed ordinance and the Prospect Heights page on the YouTube publication of this. Also, there is a community residents petition for support available, and I will absolutely share that on my YouTube page. And for press inquiries, expert commentary, or other information requests, please contact Tiffany Hinton at Tiffany, Tiffany, at Cultivating Guts, CULTIVATINGGUTS.com, or call 773-706-6843, or you can also contact Nikki Moylan. Her number is 312-914-3617. I'll say that again, 312-914-3617. Her email address is nikkimoylan@gmail.com, which is spelled NIKIMOYLAN@gmail.com. Another person you can reach out to is Randy Brace. His number is 847-502-3674. Again, 847-502-3674. And his email is randybrace@yahoo.com, which is spelled RANDYBRACE@yahoo.com. And the last person you can call also was quoted in the press release. That is Genevieve Charette, and her email address is jenny_charette@ameritech.net. But let me spell that for you. That is G as in George, ENNY _CHARET @ameritech.net. Let me give that to you again. GENNY _CHARET @ameritech.net. I hope you'll support this cause. I've always kind of wanted to have chickens in my backyard, but I'm too chicken to have them. Okay, that was a little bit of a joke. It's a lot of work, and I applaud the people who want to do that, and I really applaud the people like Tiffany and all these others that were just mentioned in providing educational services to their own children, probably friends and family. I know Tiffany does all sorts of homesteading classes. She's absolutely wonderful. So feel free to reach out to those people if you have questions, comments, concerns, or would just like to participate and support having chickens in someone's backyard. Quite honestly, when I went to their house, and I've been to Tiffany's house several times, I never heard I pulled up in the driveway, I didn't hear the chickens, and I was on the property. Now, when I went in the backyard where the chicken coop was and I got closer, yeah, I could hear it, but it was very quiet. It wasn't that big of a deal. So please help our feathered friends and our feathered friends' moms and dads by supporting this cause. And for the last segment of the show, I want to reiterate something that I've said in the past. I took a class from Dr. David Yamani from Wake Forest University called The Sociology of Guns. And he has also written a book, which I am partway through. And a true expert continues to learn once they've learned it all. So I want to share some things that I've learned about firearms and firearm sociology since starting to read his book. So he took Massad Ayub's course in 2012, which was great. He also observed, when I say he, I mean the author, David Yamani. He also observed the Suarez International Pistol Gunfighting School in 2017. And his book is called Gun Curious. He really breaks down the basics on firearms. I love it. And in his preface, he says that the media and scholarly attention are disproportionately drawn to evil, tragic, flawed, and crooked stories with firearms. Because let's face it, it sells on the media. No one ever actually looks at the sociology of it or the culture of it. And guns and gun violence are a common flashpoint for people who are arguing politics. He claims that he is a card-carrying liberal, but he's kind of halfway in between the let's ban assault rifles and I own an AR-15. I get it. And when I say assault rifle, I'm making air quotes because it is a made-up term, but it's in his book. And he basically said that when he started to get into firearms, nothing that he saw on TV or movies prepared him for the shock of an explosion literally arm's length from his face. His eyes instinctively closed and his ears rang from the gun's 160 decibels, which was more than twice the level of sound of a jet engine taking off. He also was shocked that guns observe Newton's third law of motion, that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So the combustion that forced the projectile down the barrel and out of the muzzle at 1,200 feet per second also drove the gun back towards him. And he was able to absorb some of the impact with his bent arms and his shoulders. But the muzzle still flew upward at about a 45-degree angle, giving him the sense that it would fly out of his hands. And that's common. That's why I start people off with a .22 caliber. What surprised Dr. Yamini was about gun culture in the past 6-7 years was that gun owners are people too. If you just read the scholarly literature on guns, you wouldn't know that. So his big premise is that guns are normal and normal people use guns because they are common, widespread, and typical. And guns and gun ownership are not inherently associated with deviance or abnormalities. Why don't we hear about this? Because normality is not newsworthy. It is not sexy. It doesn't sell. So he talks about his experience on a shooting range and very nervous, but saw that a range safety officer, or if I call it RSO, that's the short, always watches, and shooters typically informally will enforce safety rules with each other. Now, there's a range I go to, and there's a gentleman there, older guy, looks like the Monopoly man. He does not handle firearms safely. So when he's there, my peripheral vision is on high alert, and when I see him doing something unsafe, I let them know, although he continues to be unsafe. In addition to being safe, firearm owners are generally very generous with their guns and ammo. You walk by and you ask them, hey, what are you shooting? Sometimes you'll even get them to offer you to be able to shoot it on their dime. So on any given day, the overwhelming majority of America's tens of millions of gun owners do not experience or cause any adverse outcomes with hundreds of millions of guns. According to the National Center for Health Statistics, in 2019, there were over 14,000 homicides using firearms, and even using the faulty assumption that a different person committed every homicide using a different gun, a mere 0.1% of gun owners and 0.03% of guns are involved in firearm homicides annually. If you look at it the other way around, at least 99.98% of gun owners and 99.996% of guns are not involved in homicide in any given year. Even if suicides are added in, and in 2019 there were over 23,000 accidental deaths from firearms. In 2019 there were only 485. I shouldn't say only, that's one is too many. And non-fatal firearm injuries was a little over 84,000 in 2017. If you factor those in, only 0.16% of gun owners and 0.03% of guns are at most are responsible. That means that 99.84% of gun owners and 99.97% of guns are not associated with any of these negative outcomes. However, sometimes the outcomes are hit close to home, and that's why people are anti-gun, at least until they start shooting one. He draws a very interesting parallel between guns and alcohol. So he says, like guns, alcohol has been part of the everyday lives of people, at least since British colonist George Thorpe distilled alcohol from Indian corn mash in the Berkeley settlement near Jamestown, Virginia, around 1620. There are many personal and social ills associated with alcohol abuse led to the historic and failed, quote, noble experiment, end quote, banning alcohol with the ratification of the 18th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution in 1920 until the repeal of prohibition with ratification of the 21st Amendment in 1933. Since then, scholars have continued to document the toll that alcohol takes on individual lives and society as a whole, and they include immediate risks such as accidental injury, risky sexual behaviors, miscarriage, stillbirth, and fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. There's also long-term risks of alcohol, which includes high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, liver disease, digestive problems, breast cancer, mouth, throat, esophagus, liver, and colon cancer, diminished learning and memory, depression and anxiety, and social problems such as lost productivity, family dysfunction, and unemployment. Despite the alcohol use epidemic, anyone over the age of 21 can walk into most supermarkets, liquor stores, wine stores, beer stores, bars, or restaurants and buy alcohol. There are no laws specifying prohibited persons, no permits required, no criminal background checks, no mental health assessments, no registration, no additional fees beyond the cost of the product and sales tax. Alcohol is widely advertised on old and new media platforms, especially in its biggest stages, like the World Cup and the Super Bowl. San Francisco forced its last gun store out of business in 2015. In 2023, Yamini asked Google's AI experiment Bard, how many liquor stores are there in San Francisco? And the AI chatbot responded, according to the San Francisco Department of Public Health, there are 867 liquor stores in San Francisco. This number has steadily increased in recent years, with an average of 10 new liquor stores operating each year. He surmises that given the daily toll taken on individuals and society, why are more people not up in arms and how easy it is for us to access such a destructive product? The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health had a report that revealed alcohol kills approximately 3 times as many people annually as guns. Alcohol is also one of the largest risk factors for homicide and suicide, and is a major contributing factor to gun violence. So it's interesting that no one holds us, a lawful alcohol owner and user, responsible for the misuse of alcohol many, many thousands of times, and no one looks to me to be part of the solution rather than the problem. No one requires me to have a 0% blood alcohol content before driving, because so many others drink and drive. No one asks me how many more people have to die before I give up alcohol for the good of their fellow citizens. No one asserts that I value alcohol more than children because I drink. No one suggests we should institute more common sense laws because if we can prevent, quote, even one more death, end quote, due to alcohol, we must do so. Despite all of these negative consequences associated with the consumption, alcohol is less criticized by scholars and activists than guns, except when they focus on alcohol use by gun owners. Certainly, death and destruction caused by alcohol usually happen more slowly and less dramatically than gun injury and death. But these critics recognize that responsible alcohol use is possible despite the fact that the science is increasingly clear that alcohol confers no health benefits and any level of consumption poses risks. If the social scientists analyze guns as risk factors for injury and still enjoy a beer, the moms who demand action on guns and consume California Chardonnays, and the New York Times staff who editorialize against guns by day and drink craft cocktails in Brooklyn at night are really hypocritical. What allows them to see alcohol is normal and normal people consume alcohol, but not view firearms in the same way, is because the idea of alcohol control hits too close to home. Yamini can hear critics objecting to this argument in an instance of whataboutism as an attempt to distract readers from the problem at hand by drawing attention to a different problem. In Yamini's defense, he's trying to draw an analogy between guns and another risk factor for negative outcomes that most people who condemn and seek to control guns do not similarly criticize, even though it is more harmful and less regulated. If guns and alcohol are gun owners and alcohol users, or the gun violence epidemic and the alcohol epidemic were similarly stigmatized, this analogy would be irrelevant. There is a nonpartisan research center called Pew Research, and in 2017 they concluded that guns are unproblematic for a large part of the U.S. population. They also reported that the majority of the population currently lives with a gun in their home or has in the past, or they could see themselves owning a gun in the future. Over 1/3 said that they could. These are the gun curious. Only a minority of American adults, 1/3, told Pew that they both do not currently own and cannot ever see themselves owning a gun. These people are called no-nevers. And very interestingly, in my concealed carry classes, I'm getting some no-nevers. I'm getting some people who were at the Million Moms March in Washington, D.C., I'm getting leaders from Moms Demand Action or former leaders from Moms Demand Action. And a lot of times I hear, hey, I never thought I'd need a gun, but guess what? Society is nuts, and I think I need a gun. Gun sales went up right after March 13th, 2020, when President Trump declared a national emergency for COVID-19. And the following Monday, gun sales peaked at approximately 176,000 for the day, according to an analysis of data from the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, or NICS, N-I-C-S. And gun sales were so robust in the first month of the COVID-19 pandemic that total sales for March, 6.95 per 1,000 people in the U.S., exceeded the previous record month, which was set in December 2012, following the Sandy Hook Elementary School massacre. So to be fair, criminologists study crime, and public health scholars study pathology, and sociology study what's wrong with society, not what's right. There are courses on social problems and deviant behavior. The unproblematic or non-deviant are unmarked. To study what is normal about guns falls outside of sociology's analytic wheelhouse. That said, some biases go beyond mere disciplinary preferences. So you've heard me mention liberal gun owners, and they have some academic research into firearms. They have multiple pillars. And one of their pillars is that widespread contemporary civilian gun ownership is a continuation of an unbroken 300,000-year history of involvement with the advancing of the projectile weapon. In other words, the human-weapon relationship is behaviorally normal for Homo sapiens as a species. There's a ton of negative stereotypes about gun owners, including they're uneducated, toxically masculine, and political retrogrades. And sometimes people balk at this. I will tell you there's a ton of intelligent people who use firearms. My father was one, I am one, my children are one, and I am not uneducated with a master's degree and taught on the college level, and there's plenty of people like that out there. It never occurred to Dr. Yamini that working at a gun shop doesn't make someone an expert on firearms, nor does it require them to put the customer's best interest first. So, and he tells a story about how he bought a 6-hour P238, which looks like a Walther PPK or a James Bond gun, and it wasn't good for him. And that's one of the reasons why, if you take a class from me, part of what I do, if you take 2 lessons or you take a concealed carry class and you're a new gun owner, I will go to the range with you, or the gun store, I should say. I don't charge for this. And I will help you pick out a firearm. So if you're looking for a Glock 48, but there is a bonus or something incentive to sell a Glock 43, the salesman may be pushing you towards a Glock 43, and I'll say, oh, no, contraire, that is not appropriate. And I've seen it over and over and over again, where when it benefits the employee or it benefits the gun store, that's what they're pushing. Have you heard the news? In Massachusetts, at about 1 p.m. on Tuesday, multiple communities were affected by a 911 outage, said Elaine Driscoll, Director of Communications and Policy at the state's Executive Office of Public Safety and Security. From 1 p.m. to 3:45 p.m. across the state, multiple communities did not have access to 911. I did hear that there's an alternate way to contact the authorities. However, in reality, in an emergency, are you going to be able to have the wherewithal and awareness to figure out what that alternative method is and use it? I doubt that would happen. It was restored after several hours, but it was impossible for anyone to reach emergency services. Boston Police Commissioner Michael Cox said it was important for residents to know about these alternate ways of getting help, particularly given the hot weather heading towards the Northeast. He advised the public to contact local police departments if necessary. The mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, said that residents shouldn't worry about calling the correct number or facility for their emergency. Just reach out to the nearest authorities. If you're experiencing an emergency, if you find a way to police, fire, or EMS, we'll make sure that you get to the right place. What are you going to do if you have a problem and cannot call 911 for the police? This is an ideal time with all of the political and economic uncertainty to take a concealed carry class. Our next concealed carry class is going to be July 20th and 21st in the northwest suburbs. You can sign up by going to firearmmentor.com/classes. That's firearmmentor.com/classes. Sign up now. We have monthly concealed carry license CCL classes in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. Dates can be seen at firearmmentor.com/classes. If you have a question, we can be reached at www.firearmmentorcard.com. That is our electronic business card, has all of our contact information and links in it. It's the easiest way to get a hold of us. Until next time, stay safe out there, and I'll see you at the shooting range. This is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor signing off. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.